Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. We're reading the Meditations of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius Antonius, translated by George Long. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to announce this is meditation number 12 of 12. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been on a great journey, haven't we? This is the final meditation. Hopefully you read the first 11 with Jimmy. Jimmy certainly enjoyed reading them with you, and very excited to be wrapping this beautiful, beautiful book up of Marcus Aurelius and what he was thinking about as he was defending Rome and killing barbarians. Ready? Meditation number 12. Number 1. All these things at which thou wishest to arrive by a circuitous road, thou canst have now, if thou dost not refuse them to thyself. In other words, you can get all these things. Remember, he was writing in Greek. George Long is translating from the Greek, hence the thou and the these and the thy. But it's really you, and he's talking to himself, and he's writing these down after battles, probably in the evening. No cell phones, no distractions, just him, his thoughts, and nature. So all those things which you want to arrive at by circuitous, a circle, you can now have. And this means if thou wilt take no notice of all the past and trust the future to providence and direct the present only conformably to piety and justice. That's important. Remember, he lives in the present. He tries to focus in the present. We want to focus in the present. We don't want to think about the future or the past, right? So conformably to piety, just providence, future to providence, trust to providence, that thou mayst be content with the lot which is assigned to thee. Be content with what you're doing, for nature designed it for thee and thee for it. Remember, he believes nature, everything is here. I'm here because of nature, and nature's not going to give me anything I can't handle, etc., etc. Conformably to justice, that thou mayst always speak the truth freely and without disguise, and do things which are agreeable to law and according to the worth of each. And let neither another man's wickedness hinder thee, nor opinion, nor voice, nor yet the sensations of the poor flesh which has grown about thee. For the passive part will look to this. In other words, let your brain be your guide, let reason be your guide. And if then, whatever the time may be when thou shalt be near to thy departure, neglecting everything else, thou shalt respect only thy ruling faculty and the reason and the divinity within thee. And if thou shalt be afraid not because thou must sometimes cease to live, but if thou shalt fear never to have begun to live according to nature, pause, then thou wilt be a man worthy of the universe which has produced thee, and thou wilt cease to be a stranger in thy native land, and to wonder at things which happen daily as if they were something unexpected, and to be dependent on this or that. Jimmy put philosophy in a nutshell. This first one of number 12 is probably everything you need to, should know, would know about Marcus Aurelius and his philosophy, which we're going to talk about in the analysis after we finish number 12. So he's basically, don't look at the past, the present, just live in the present, conform to justice. So you always speak freely. Don't be a hypocrite without disguise. Let neither another man's wickedness hinder thee or anybody else's opinion about you. And whatever time may be, whatever time you have, thou shalt be near thy departure as you're nearing death. neglecting everything else, that thou shalt respect only the reason, your reason, respect your reason, and the divinity within you. You come from nature, from the gods, the God, providence. If thou shalt be afraid not, because thou must sometimes cease to live, but if thou shalt fear, never to have begun to live. So don't be afraid you're going to die if you're afraid that you haven't lived according to nature. So if you don't, you should have no fear. And if you have no fear, you'll be a man worthy of the universe which it produced you. And you'll be able to be you will cease to be a stranger in your native land and to wonder at things which happen daily as if they were something unexpected. Things happen for a reason. Got it? Number 2, God, notice capital G, singular. And we've talked about this in the meditations. So if you don't remember it, go back and reread some of them. Marcus, when he writes about God, it's either singular, plural, lowercase, providence, or nature. Those 4 words in the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius are interchangeable. And it's important to drop your own belief systems for a moment and adapt the emperor's belief system, because he mixes it up. He mixes it up. God sees the minds of all men, barred the material vesture and rind and impurities, bared of the material vesture, rind and impurities. In other words, God sees us. For with his, God's, intellectual part alone, he touches the intelligence only which has flowed and been derived from himself into these bodies. Our reason comes from God, God's providence nature. And if thou also use yourself to do this, thyself, thou wilt rid thyself of thy much trouble. You're just try to do the same thing. And if thou also useth thyself to do this, to do what? What's this? It's a pronoun, meaning all this stuff before it. What's that? Use your intellectual part, right? Try to see the minds and get rid of everything around that. Just look at things as they are. You'll get rid of a lot of trouble for yourself. For he who regards not the poor flesh which envelopes him surely will not trouble himself by looking after remnant and dwelling and fame and such like externals and show. Raiment, right? Number 3. The things are 3 of which thou art composed: a little body, a little breath, and intelligence. So we're composed of 3 things: the body, the breath, and intelligence. And of these, the first 2 are yours, right? Thine. So far as it is thy duty to take care of them, the body and your breath. But the third is properly thine. So the first 2 are yours, are thine, so far as it's your duty to take care of them. But the third alone is properly yours. What's the third? Intelligence. Therefore, if you shall separate from yourself, that is, from thy understanding, from thyself, that is, from thy understanding, whatever others do or say, and whatever thou hast done or said thyself, and whatever future things trouble thee, because they may happen, and whatever in the body which envelopes thee, or in the breath, which is by nature associated with the body, is attracted to thee, independent of thy will, and whatever the external circumfluent vortex, there's something, whirls around, so that the intellectual power that you have, exempt from the things of fate, can live pure and free by itself, doing what is just and accepting what happens and saying the truth. If you could separate, I say, from this ruling faculty the things which are attached to it by the impressions of sense, and the things of time to come and of the time that is past, you will make thyself like Claudius sphere, quote, all round and in its joyous rest reposing. There's a footnote by George that says, Hemodicleus is corrupt in Antonius, which means that he's saying that it's corrupt. It has been restored by Perion from a Turin manuscript, and he goes like this. He says, Marcus is quoting it incorrectly, that it's corrupt. With due respect, I say to George, shut up. Basically, this is Marcus Aurelius writing down what he believes to be a quote from Empedocles, however you pronounce it. And if thou shalt strive to live only what is really thy life, that is, in the present, then thou wilt be able to pass that portion of life which remains for thee up to the time of thy death, free from perturbations, nobly and obedient to your own demon. In other words, live in the present. Very interesting. And when I say with due respect to George, I mean that with due respect, because whatever Marcus is writing, Marcus believes, and he's quoting it from whatever he read. So he may say this was restored by this guy from a Turin manuscript. Quite frankly, Marcus is Marcus, and whatever he's doing, if he's doing it from recalling what he read, if he's dealing with a manuscript that he has on his desk, on his table, they didn't have desks, right? Or wherever he's writing from, it doesn't matter. It's a nice footnote. George is a good guy, but to understand what Marcus Aurelius is telling us, we don't need to know the exact quote. But you understand what he's saying in number 3, right? 3 things you're composed of, and try to live your life in the present. Number 4, I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. Can you think of a better expression than this? This is Marcus wondering how, right, we love ourselves more than the rest of other men, and yet we value less our own opinion of ourselves than the opinion of others. We're going to talk about this, about point of view. We've talked about this in other analysis in other classical literature. You see yourself as, you try to look at yourself truthfully, hopefully. It's hard. It's introspection. And then you're seen by other people. Yourself is viewed by other people. Your parents think of you in one way. Your teachers think of you in another way. One of my teachers used to think I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. He used to tell me that, one of the priests. So I got a master's degree, and I showed him. Of course, he was dead by then. Sorry. So who are you is fundamental. Who are you is a fundamental thread running throughout the meditations, which, by the way, is neglected by many of the people who interpret the meditations. I'm just telling you that. And when we do analyze these last 6, one of the fundamental thoughts running throughout here is, who are you? That's what Marcus is struggling with in these meditations. Who he is, how he should act, what he should believe, what is the truth, how he should live. Do you understand? And this is an extraordinary book because it gives us insight into someone struggling with the same questions that you and I and everyone else who was ever born struggles with. This is the same thing. Only now we have other influences than he had, don't we? We have social media who often try to tell us what we think. So think about social media in relationship to what he just said. He wonders how every person loves himself more than other people, And yet he sets less value on his own opinion than the opinion of others. Look what social media does to you or your children. When somebody, strikes out in social media at you, you think, oh my God. And you can trace it. They call it bullying now, right? Which is true and not true. If you read Marcus Aurelius, it's impossible to be bullied. It's impossible. It's impossible. The person doing the bullying is just stupid and ignorant, right? You see how this works? If then a god or a wise teacher should present himself to a man and bid him to think of nothing and to design nothing which he would not express as soon as he conceived it, he could not endure it even for a single day. So much more respect have we to what our neighbors shall think of us than to what we shall think of ourselves. So this one I gave a title of respect. To respect yourself. Or is what everybody thinks of you true? And that's why you don't respect yourself, which I don't believe. You're the only one who can determine who you are. Now, you have to gather evidence and ask people what they think of you, or they'll tell you what they think of you. And quite frankly, maybe it matters and maybe it doesn't, but it shouldn't. You are who you are. Right? I was going to say something there. Who cares what other people think sometimes, right? When we got married, we only had enough money for 75 people. That's it, 75 people. That's because we had to pay for the wedding ourselves. And in those days, money was tight. Our combined income the first year of marriage was $11,000. Oh! But we had 75 people at our wedding. I lost so many friends. And I told them the truth. I said, I can't afford it. I'd love to have you, but we can't afford it. We had to make a cut. And I lost friends. They couldn't understand it. They took it personally. It wasn't personal. It was financial. Not one of them offered to pay for their plate. Number 5, how can it be that the gods, after having arranged all these things well and benevolently for mankind, overlooked this alone? That some men, and very good men, and men who, as we may say, have had most communion with the divinity and through pious acts and religious observances, have been most intimate with the divinity, when they have once died, should never exist again, but should be completely extinguished. But if this is so, be assured that if it ought to have been otherwise, the gods would have done it. For if it were just, it would also be possible. And if it were according to nature, nature would have done. But because it is not so, if in fact it is not so, be thou convinced that it ought not to have been so. For thou seest even in thyself that in this inquiry thou art disputing with the deity. And we should not dispute with the gods, unless they were most excellent and most just. But if this is so, then they would not have allowed anything in the ordering of the universe to be neglected unjustly and irrationally. Look at the logic of this guy. Look at the logic of this guy. He's talking about death, right? And he starts out by saying, how could the gods who've arranged everything like this, right, allowed that these people who are very pious and religious and that once they died should never exist again? How could they allow that? How could they allow them to be completely extinguished? Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, throughout the meditations, he's arguing death is a huge thing. In fact, the final analysis, well, I'm not going to give you, I'll give you the title of my final analysis. It's called Death Wish, which was a famous movie with Charles Bronson. But that's the topic, that's the title of my final analysis of Marcus Aurelius. So make sure you read it once it's posted. But I want you to think about what he's saying here. He's arguing about the gods, about God, creation. How can these pious people be extinguished completely? And he says, but if this is so, now he's not convinced it's so. Be assured that if it ought to have been otherwise, if it had to be otherwise, in other words, not extinguished, the gods would have done it. They would have done it. For if it were just, it would also be possible, just. And if it were according to nature, nature would have it so. But because it is not so, if in fact it is not so, do you think like that to yourself? Are you that logical? Are you that thoughtful? Because it is not so. What is not so? What is it? That the God should allow someone who's been pious to be extinguished completely? Because it is not so. If in fact it is not so, you should be convinced that it ought not to have been so. You talk about confusing? You should read this 10 times and see if you can make sense of it. Because Marcus Aurelius is difficult, but it's not impossible to understand. He's arguing about life after death. Right? And he's basically saying, for thou seest in yourself. Look at yourself. In this inquiry and asking this question, right? Thou art disputing with the deity. You're arguing with the gods, the deity, God. You're arguing. You shouldn't be arguing with God. And we should not thus dispute with the gods unless they, the gods, were most excellent and most just, in which case we should, because we're given free will, right? Freedom to do just that. But if this is so, and see how he gets tangled up? But if this is so, then they would not have allowed anything in the ordering of the universe to be neglected unjustly or irrationally. And he stops. And do you think he walked away from that meditation confused or with clarity? What do you think? What do you think? Read it again on your own time. I could read it again with you. And ask yourself if Marcus Aurelius walked away from that meditation number 5 confused or with complete clarity on life after death. Number 6. Practice thyself, even in the things that thou despairest of accomplishing. Practice. For even the left hand, which is ineffectual for all other things for want of practice, holds the bridle more vigorously than the right hand, for it has been practiced in this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm surprised I didn't mark this. This is a double arrow. Double arrow! Practice makes perfect. Think about this. Think about this. Practice, practice, practice. Practice everything. Now, do you think Marcus Aurelius was right-handed after reading this or left-handed? Yeah. Who could tell, right? Nobody knows. I will bet you a Starbucks card that he was right-handed because he talks about the left hand holding the bridle on his horse more vigorously than the right hand because it does it more often. Practice makes perfect. You know how many free throws Michael Jordan shot? Every day, day in and day out. Day in and day out. You can look it up. Number 7. Not that I'm telling you to play basketball. Number 7, consider in what condition, both in body and soul, a man should be when he is overtaken by death. And consider the shortness of life, the boundless abyss of time, past and future, the feebleness of all matter. A profound meditation. Profound, right? Consider what condition, both body and soul, a man should be when he dies. And consider the shortness of life and the boundless. It makes you say, some of you are saying, Jimmy, when I read that, I don't want to do anything. Well, that's not what Marcus Aurelius is saying, is he? He's not saying don't do anything. He's saying keep yourself in condition because you never know when death's coming, right? Number 8, contemplate the formative principles of things bare of their coverings, the purposes of actions, and consider what pain is and what pleasure is and what death is and fame, and who is himself the cause of his uneasiness, how no man is really hindered by another, and that everything is opinion. If you were to take one of the meditations that sums up one of his, well, there's many, but this one sums up philosophy, formative principles, contemplate them. He's writing to himself to think about these things. What are the things? The bare things that bear of their coverings, bear of their, what does that mean? The essence of things. What's the essence of this? What's the essence of this that you're looking at, hearing? Purpose of action. Why are you doing things? What are you doing? What is the purpose of your action? Are you just playing Nintendo games? You're playing video games? What's the purpose of that action? Well, I want to be entertained. Well, good for you. You'll never get that hour back that you spend playing a video game. You'll never get it back. Good luck. Well, Jimmy, are you saying you never played video games? No, I've played video games. I haven't touched a video game in 15 years. I don't need video games anymore. But you may need them. I'm not saying you don't need them. I'm just saying consider the purpose of the action. Well, I want to be entertained. Okay, good. So instead of helping other people or, exposing yourself to new ideas, you'd rather play a video game. Well, it's your choice. Consider what pain is. What is pain? And what is pleasure? Well, I want to avoid pain at all costs. Well, no pain, no gain, remain the same. Who said that? Email me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. No pain, no gain, remain the same. Or as William Blake, the famous English poet, would say, you never know what's enough until you know what's more than enough. Got to be careful there. Got to be careful there. You're trying to find out what's more than enough, it's not good, right? Be careful. What pleasure is, what death is, what fame is, and who is to himself the cause of his uneasiness. Often we ourselves are the cause of our uneasiness. We let our mind go everywhere because everything is opinion. Everything is opinion. Number 9, in the application of thy principles, thou must be like a pancreatist. Pancreatist is a competitor or winner in the Praesidium, an ancient Greek athletic contest that combined wrestling and boxing. Well, Jimmy is basically suggesting this is the word that now is replaced by, right? What? Mixed martial arts, right? MMA, right? Wrestling and boxing. Not like the So in the application of your principles, you've got to be like a mixed martial artist, not like the gladiator. Because the gladiator lets fall the sword, which he uses, and then is killed. But the other, the pancratists, right, always has his hand and needs to do nothing else than use it. Use what God gave you. Isn't that beautiful? Number 10, see what things are in themselves, dividing them into matter, form, and purpose. The more you look, the more you see, the more you see, the better you know where to look. Number 11, what a power man has to do nothing except what God will approve, and to accept all that God may give him. What a power man has to do nothing except what God will approve, and to accept. In other words, that's your power, to do what God approves. Well, I don't believe in God. Okay, but you have to understand Marcus does, or gods, or deities, or providence, or nature. It's your power to do what God approves. What is approved? What? Virtue, justice, and to accept all God may give him. Number 12, with respect to that which happens conformably to nature, we ought to blame neither gods, for they do nothing wrong, either voluntarily or involuntarily, or blame men, for they do nothing wrong except involuntarily. Consequently, we should blame nobody. That's a tough one. So Jimmy titled that Blame. So you don't blame the gods, for they do nothing wrong, voluntary or involuntary, and men only do wrong involuntarily. So we should blame nobody. Don't blame anybody. Should you blame anybody? What is blame? What is blame? When you blame someone, right? Blame yourself. That's his suggestion is we're guilty. You are guilty. We are all guilty. Blame ourselves. 13. How ridiculous and what a stranger he is who's surprised at anything which happens in life. Why do you think he wrote that meditation? How ridiculous, what a stranger he is who is surprised at anything which happens in life. In other words, you're ridiculous if you're surprised by anything that happens. What surprises you? Are you surprised by the way people behave? Are you surprised by the amount of violence in the world today? Are you surprised by the lack of consideration that people give to each other? Does that surprise you? He's saying nothing should surprise you. Why is that? That's a tough one. 14. Either there is a fatal necessity and invisible order, or a kind of providence, or a confusion without purpose and without a director. So there's a choice, right? Either there's necessity and some type of order, or there's there's providence, or there's just confusion without purpose, chaos, right? If there is an invisible necessity, why do you resist it? If there is an invincible necessity, if there's a destiny, if you believe there's a destiny, why do you resist it? Who's he talking to? He's talking to himself. He's the emperor. And he doesn't know which is true. But if there is a providence which allows itself to be appropriated, make thyself worthy to help the divinity. If there is a providence, if there's gods, make yourself useful and worthy to help it out. But if there is a confusion without a governor, be content that in such a tempest, such chaos, thou hast in thyself a certain ruling intelligence. You have reason. In this chaos, you have reason. And even if the tempest carries you away, let it carry away your poor flesh, your breath, and everything else, because the intelligence will not carry away. He's quite sure of that, isn't he? And what is the rational intelligence? That's your soul. That's you, who you are. You're inside. We are the stuff stars are made of, right? So in any of these cases, whether it's necessity, fate, providence, or chaos, you have your soul, your intelligence. It will not carry away. I hope. So 15. Does the light of the lamp shine without losing its splendor until it is extinguished? And shall the truth which is in you and justice and temperance be extinguished? George adds the brackets. Truth. 16. When a man has presented the appearance of having done wrong, how then do I know if this is a wrongful act? Don't forget he's the emperor, right? And even if he has done wrong, how do I know that he has not condemned himself? And if this is so, like tearing his own face, consider that he would not have the bad man do wrong, is like the man who would not have the fig tree to bear juice in the figs, and that infants to cry, and the horse to neigh, and whatever else must of necessity be. For what must a man do who has such a character? If then thou art irritable, cure this man's disposition. Puts a footnote here. Interpreters translate the words this way. Epictetus translates it this way. Forget George's footnote for a moment and go back and think about this. 16. When a man presented the appearance of having done wrong, how do I know if this is wrong? And even if he's done wrong, how do I know he hasn't condemned himself? Don't forget, he's the judge, he's the emperor, right? And so this is like tearing his own face. Consider that he would not have the bad man do wrong. Consider that he who would not have, if you would not have a bad man do wrong, it's like asking a man who would not have the fig tree bear juice in the figs. A fig, he's used the fig analogy before. Can you expect a fig not to be a fig? Fig is a fig, right? A fig tree produces figs. You can't expect a fig tree not to produce figs. Well, it might not produce figs, but it's not going to produce an apple. And so you can't expect infants not to cry. You can't expect the horse not to neigh, and whatever else must of necessity be. So if you're irritable, cure the man's disposition. If you're ticked off at the man who did wrong, cure the man's disposition. It's a lot to think about. 17. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. George adds the brackets, and he puts a footnote here, and he says there is something wrong here or incomplete. Read the footnote. Don't read the brackets yet. Just read what I just read. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. And it stops there. George puts the brackets here, for let thy efforts be, and then there's a dash, and he says there's something wrong here or incomplete. Well, of course it's incomplete. For let thy efforts be, you finish it. Just read the meditation, for heaven's sakes. If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. For let your effort, you finish the meditation, ladies and gentlemen. You finish the meditation. For let thy efforts be toward doing what you should be doing. Not opinion, right? Live in the present. 18. In everything always observe what the thing is, which produces for thee an appearance, and then resolve it by dividing it into the formal, the material, the purpose, and the time within which it must end. Put things in perspective. See things. Seeing, right? Seeing. The more you look, the more you see. The more you see, the better you know where to look. One of my favorite sayings, right? Which is true. So see things. See things as they are. Don't interpret them. Look at what they are. Don't bring yourself into what you're seeing. Don't color it. 19. Perceive at last that thou hast in thee something better and more divine than the things which cause the various effects, and as it were, pull thee by the strings. So in yourself, you have something better and more divine than things around you. What is there now in my mind, hyphen? Is it fear? Suspicion? Desire? Anything of the kind? Introspection is what I wrote here. That's what he's asking himself. There's something in all of us that's divine, right? So what's in my mind now from, having me not focus on what is in me, what is in truly every human being? Is it fear? Am I fearful? Of what? Am I suspicious? Of what? Do I desire? What? Anything? Then he says number 5, number 11. Right? Number 20. First, do nothing inconsiderately, nor without a purpose. Second, make thy acts refer to nothing else than a social end. Jimmy wrote, how to act. This is how to act. Don't do anything without a purpose. Don't waste time. Second, make thy acts refer to nothing else than to a social end. Number 20 of this meditation, number 20 of number 12 of this meditation, right? Sums up why you're reading with Jimmy. I'm doing it for a purpose because classics are not read these days and they should be read. You're missing a whole aspect of living if you don't do that. And secondly, make thy acts refer to nothing else than a social end. I think reading with Jimmy will benefit all of us. Why? Because it should make you think. Well, I don't want to think. Well, good luck with living that. Just float through life. See you later. But you can at least debate these things. You don't have to follow what everything Marcus Aurelius says. I certainly don't. But I try to understand them. And the more I try to understand them and understand them and appreciate them, the more I realize this guy was really smart. Really smart. There's something about what they call his Stoicism, which we're going to talk about, or his philosophy, which may or may not be Stoic. We'll talk about that. But it's his philosophy and his thinking and his introspection and his way of examining everything around him. Now, he's the emperor, so he's got a little time, a little extra time, right? But he was a fighting emperor. He was at war all the time. We're all at war in a certain sense, aren't we? Fighting for our jobs, fighting for, to stay alive or survival in tough economies, right? 21. Consider that before long thou wilt be nobody and nowhere, nor will any of the things exist, right? Which thou now seest, nor any of those who are now living. For all things are formed by nature to change and to be turned and to perish, in order that other things in continuous succession may exist. He refers to number 928. But change is throughout the meditations, right? 22. Very important. Consider that everything is opinion, and opinion is in thy power. I'm giving this an arrow. I'm giving this 2 arrows. Everything is opinion, and opinion is in your power. Take away then when thou choosest, when you want, your opinion, and like a mariner who has doubled the promontory, you're going to find calm and everything stable and a waveless bay. I should stop there. Do you believe that? Do you believe everything is opinion? For example, how do you know this is George Long's translation? Well, I believe it is. How do you know Marcus Aurelius wrote this in Greek and then somebody translated? Well, I believe it is. It's my opinion. And you have an opinion. So everything is opinion. And opinion is in your power, my power, everybody's power. But if you take away, when you choose your opinion, You're like the mariner who's doubled the promontory and you'll find calm and everything's stable. Isn't it true? Isn't it true? Number 28, any one activity, whatever it may be, when it has ceased at its proper time, suffers no evil because it has ceased. Nor he who has done this act does he suffer any evil for this reason, that the act has ceased. So in a like manner, then, the whole, which consists of all the acts, which is our life, if it cease at its proper time, suffers no evil for this reason, that it has ceased. It's over. Nor he who has terminated this series at the proper time has been ill dealt with. But the proper time and the limit nature fixes, sometimes as in old age, the peculiar nature of man, but always the universal nature, by the change of whose parts the whole universe continues ever young and perfect. And everything which is useful to the universal is also good and in season. And so therefore, the termination of life for every man is no evil, because neither is it shameful, since it is both independent of the will and not opposed to the general interest, but it is good, since it is seasonable, profitable, and congruent with the universal. For thus, too, he is moved by the deity, who is moved in the same manner with the deity, and moved towards the same things in the deity's mind. Just beautifully written thoughts about death. Why is he so obsessed with death? Why do you think Marcus Aurelius, is he obsessed with death? Well, he talks a lot about it, doesn't he? Why do you think he talks a lot about death? He can die at any moment. He's fighting barbarians. Right? Right? 24. These three principles thou must have in readiness. Here we go again. 3 rules. Gives himself a lot of rules, doesn't he? In the things that thou dost do, nothing either inconsiderately or otherwise than justice herself would act. So always act considerately with justice. But with respect to what may happen to thee from without, consider that it happens either by chance or according to providence, and that you must neither blame chance nor accuse providence. Second, so in other words, don't act inconsiderately, act with justice. And if things happen to you, it's either by chance or providence, but you shouldn't blame them because that's just what happens. Second, consider what every being is from the seed to the time of its receiving a soul, and from the reception of a soul to the giving back of the same, and of what things every being is compounded and into what things it is resolved. That's a deep thought right here, ladies and gentlemen. Consider whatever, from seed to you get your soul. Well, I don't believe you get a soul. Forget what you believe, please. Remember, we're reading what he believes. Third, if thou should suddenly be raised up above the earth, and you should look down on human things, and you observe a variety of them and how great it is, and at the same time you should see at a glance how great is the number of beings who dwell all around in the air, the ether, consider that as often as thou shouldst be raised up, thou wouldst see the same things, the sameness of form, and the shortness of duration. Are these things to be proud of? I don't know. This guy's a deep thinker. Who thinks like this in ancient Rome when they couldn't even fly, right? Pardon me. Number 25. Cast away opinion, and you're saved. Who then hinders you from casting your opinion away? Who's stopping you? right? Remember, it's all opinion, right? Everything is opinion. He just said that in 22. And now he's telling himself, get rid of your opinion. Who's stopping you? Why? He's probably thinking, or he's arguing in his head. He's got to make a judgment call, and he's got an opinion, and he's trying to say, well, this is all opinion anyway, right? So just get rid of it. 26. When thou art troubled about anything, you've forgotten this, that all things happen according to the universal nature. And you've forgotten this, that a man's wrongful act is nothing to you. And further, you've forgotten this, that everything which happens always happens so and will happen so and now happens so everywhere. And you also forgot this, how close is the kinship between a man and the whole of human race? For it, human race, is a community, not of a little blood or seed, but of intelligence. And you've forgotten this too, that every man's intelligence is a God, and it is an efflux of the deity. And you've forgotten this, that nothing is a man's own, but that his child and his body and his soul came from the deity. And you've forgotten this, that everything is opinion. And lastly, you've forgotten that every man lives the present time only and loses only this. I'm stunned. I'm surprised I didn't give this 3 arrows. I'm going to give this an arrow. I'm going to give it another arrow. Really, give it a double arrow. Give it a triple arrow. A triple arrow. Give it 3 arrows. Don't forget these things. When you're troubled about anything. So think about something that's troubling you. Think about anything that's troubling you right now, and reread this. You forgot that everything happens according to the universal nature. That a wrongful act is nothing to you. That everything that happens always happened and will happen and now happens everywhere. And you've forgotten how close the kinship between man and between you and everyone else, right? And you've forgotten that every man's intelligence is a God. Your reasoning, your intelligence, right? A gift from God, the deity, whoever that deity is, you may believe or you may not. And that nothing is your own, right? It came from the deity. I don't believe that, Jimmy. You don't have to. Just believe and understand for the moment what Marcus believes. He's the emperor of Rome. He's the most powerful person in the known world at that time. A snap of his fingers and people die, right? And he's saying when you're troubled, he's talking to himself. Just remember all these things. 27. Constantly bring to thy recollection those who have complained greatly about anything, and those who have been most conspicuous by the greatest fame or misfortune or enmities or fortunes of any kind. And then think, where are they all now? Smoke and ash and a tale, or not even a tale story. And let there be present to thy mind also everything of this sort, how Fabius Catulus lived in the country, and Lucius Lupus in his gardens, and he names names, Tiberius at Capri, etc. He names all these people. And in fine, think about the eager pursuit of anything co-joined with pride. Pride. And how worthless everything is after which men violently strain. And how much more philosophical it is for a man in the opportunities presented to him to show himself just, temperate, obedient to the gods, and to do this all with simplicity. For the pride which is proud of its want of pride is the most intolerable of all. Fame is fleeting, and so is pride. That's what I wrote here. Pride cometh before the fall. Pride is a horrible sin, right? The 7 sins. Isn't that one of them? Make a note. 7 sins. Is pride a sin? 7 sins. 28. To those who ask, where hast thou seen the gods? Or how dost thou comprehend that they exist? And so worship them. I answer, in the first place, they may have seen even with the eyes. Number 2, and there's a long footnote here. This number 28 is about the existence of God. So we're going to read this footnote, right? Seen with the eyes, seen even with the eyes. George says it's supposed that this may be explained by Stoic doctrine that the universe is a God or living being, blah, blah, blah. But the emperor may mean, he says the emperor, he's talking about Marcus Aurelius. He doesn't want to use his first name. He says with respect, the emperor, that we know that gods exist. And he afterwards states because he sees what they do. As we know that a man has intellectual powers because we can see what a man does. And in no other way do we know it. We see what they do. So this passage will agree with the passage of the epistle to the Romans, the epistle to the Colossians. This is First Testament or New Testament, pardon me, in which Jesus Christ is named the image of the invisible God. So now he's taking a leap. George is taking a leap into Christianity, which didn't exist yet, right? Christians. I mean, it did, but he's taking a leap about the existence of God here, and he's tying it to the epistle of Romans, right? The epistle of the Colossians. And then Gallagher, the other translator, he says, his notes are a wonderful collection of learning. I haven't read Gallagher. I don't intend to read Gallagher. But his notes are a collection of learning, and it's sound and good, and quotes a passage from Calvin. This is another theologian, philosopher, Calvinism, right? Which is founded on St. Paul's language. So George is a scholar. George, this footnote is filled with things you should think about, read about, and grab if you're interested in taking an even deeper dive than I intend to take with Marcus Aurelius. But what Marcus is saying to those who ask, how do you know about God? How do you know they exist? He says, in the first place, they may have seen even with the eyes, that I've actually seen them, right, with the eyes. And in the second place, neither have I seen even my own soul. I haven't seen my soul, and yet I honor it. Thus then, with respect to the gods, from what I constantly experience of their power, from this, I comprehend that they exist, and I venerate them. We may or may not read St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Thomas Aquinas was a theologian, a very great thinker, and he wrote the arguments for the existence of God. But I can tell you, even if we don't cover them on Reading with Jimmy, that this is really where you take a leap of faith, because there's no way you can know. You have to believe. It's called a leap of faith. And since we learn from Marcus Aurelius that everything is opinion, that's your opinion if God exists or not, isn't it? That's all I'm saying. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Email me. 29. The safety of life is this: to examine everything all through, what it is itself, and that it's material, and what is the formal part. With all thy soul to do justice and to say the truth. And what remains except to enjoy life by joining one good thing to another, so as not to leave in the smallest intervals between them? This is how to live. How to live. Number 30. There is one light of the sun, though it is interrupted by walls and mountains and other things infinite. And there is one common substance through which it is distributed among countless bodies which have their several qualities. And there is one soul, though it is distributed among infinite natures and individual circumscriptions. And there is one intelligent soul, though it seems to be divided. Now, in the things which have been mentioned, all the other parts, such as those which are air and matter, without sensation and have no fellowship, and yet even these parts, the intelligent principle holds together, and the gravitation towards the same. But intellect, in a peculiar manner, tends to that which is of the same kin and combines with it, and the feeling for communion is not interrupted. Communion, right? All is one. This is a tough passage. You should go back and read it if you have time, right? If you have time. This footnote here, George has, this is a continuation. Again, I think my interpretation of Antonius is right. Of course he does. This is carried over from the other one, right? 31. I would not expect George to write anything else, except that he thinks his interpretation is right. And that's okay to think like that with respect. But your interpretation is more important than George's interpretation. You have to think about these things. 31. What dost thou wish, to continue to exist? Well, do you wish to have sensation, movement, growth, and then again cease to grow? To use thy speech? To think? What is there of all these things which seem thee worth desiring? But if it is easy to set little value on all these things, turn to that which remains, which is to follow reason and God. But it is inconsistent with honoring reason and God to be troubled, because by death a man will be deprived of other things. What you wish for, right? See how he talks to himself? You see the beauty of arguing with yourself? What do you want? To continue to exist, to live forever, right? What do you wish for? To have sensation, growth, and then what? Are all these things worth desiring, right? If it's easy to set little value on all these things, right? Turn to the things that really mean something. Reason and God. But it's inconsistent with honoring reason and God to be troubled by death. You see, he's talked himself out of worrying about death again. 32. How small a part of the boundless and unfathomable time is assigned to every man, for it is very soon swallowed up into the eternal. And how small a part of the whole substance, and how small a part of the universal soul, and so on and on. What a small clod of the whole earth thou creepest. Reflecting on all this, consider nothing to be great, except to act as thy nature leads thee, and to endure that which the common nature brings. Life is short, play hard. 33. How does the ruling faculty make use of itself? For all lies in this. But everything else, whether it is in the power of thy will or not, is only lifeless ashes and smoke. Reason is important. 34. This reflection is most adapted to move us to contempt of death, and that even those who think pleasure to be good and pain is evil still have despised it. This reflection is most adapted to move us to contempt of death. What reflection? That even those who think pleasure is good and pain is evil despise death. There's that death again, huh? 35. The man to whom that only is good, the man to whom that only is good which comes in due season, and to whom it is the same thing, whether he has done more or fewer acts conformable to right reason, and to whom it makes no difference whether he contemplates the world for a longer or a shorter time, note the hyphen, for this man neither is death a terrible thing. Isn't that the truth? Right? Read it again. 36. Man, thou hast been a citizen in this great state. What difference does it make to thee whether it's for 5 years? For that which is conformable to the laws is just for all. Wherein the hardship then, if no tyrant, nor yet an unjust judge, sends thee away from the state, but nature who brought thee into it? The same as if a praetor who has employed an actor dismisses him from the stage, hyphen. But I have not finished the 5 acts. But only 3 of them, says the actor. Thou sayest, well, hyphen, thou sayest, well, but in life the 3 acts are the whole drama. For what shall be complete drama is determined by him who was once the cause of its composition and now of its dissolution. But you, are the cause of neither. Depart, then satisfied, for he also who releases thee is satisfied. Thou sayest, well, you dismiss the actor, and the actor says, I'm not done. I got 3 acts. No, you're done. The drama is determined by him who once was the cause of its composition, and now of its dissolution. Him. Who's him? God, the deity, the providence. But you art the cause of neither. You didn't cause the play. You didn't cause the acts. You're the cause of neither. So depart, satisfied. For he also who releases thee is satisfied. His last thought is about death, ladies and gentlemen, because that's the end of the 12th meditation of Marcus Aurelius. I don't know about you, but I read 12 of these meditations and I'm exhausted. I hope you're not. No, I'm kidding. I'm not exhausted. I'm ready. This concludes our reading of the 12th and final meditation of Marcus Aurelius, and I hope you enjoyed the experience. You can go back and you can watch any of these 12 meditations. Take your time, go back, stop, start, along with the analysis of some of them. You already have an analysis of the first one, the first 6, and shortly they'll be posted the analysis of the last 6, and really an overview of all 12. And I encourage you to read that. Be sure to visit and read other classics on the website. Remember, these are classics. We are reading the classics to learn how others lead their life and how to lead ours. And we're also reading the classics because it's literature charged with meaning. Literature charged with meaning, as Ezra Pound said. Remember, questions, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. You have a terrific life, ladies and gentlemen. A terrific day, terrific month, whatever's allowed at us, right? And come back soon. Hopefully I'm still here. See you.